Okay, so let's be real for a sec. Who hasn't sat through, like, a huge GE superhero movie and walked out thinking, whoa, there's some deep stuff in there?
Mm-hmm.
Today, we are strapping in for a deep dive into the Marvel universe.
Let's do it.
But we're not just talking about, who would win in a fight, even though that is always fun to think about.
Right.
We're using these, like, iconic heroes as a lens to grapple with some pretty huge philosophical questions, like free will versus destiny. Do we actually have control over our lives, or are we all just, I don't know, playing out a script?
Yeah, and it's so fascinating to me how these stories, even with all the kind of outlandish plots and superpowers and stuff, they still manage to tap into this deep human anxiety that we all have about choice and consequence. Like we might not be out there battling intergalactic warlords, but that that feeling of am I really in control here? I think we can all relate to that.
Absolutely. Like, just take Iron Man, right?
Right.
Tony Stark, genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist, builds himself a suit of armor that basically lets him bend the world to his will. It's kind of seductive, right?
Oh yeah,
Like
yeah.
this idea that we could invent our way out of any problem, just be the masters of our own destiny.
Right. And that's actually what makes his story such a powerful exploration of free will. Because even with all that tech, all that supposed control, Stark is constantly facing the limitations of his own choices.
Okay, so you're talking about Ultron, right?
Exactly.
That whole creates a sentient AI to like protect the world,
Mm.
and it decides to wipe out humanity.
Right, right. Age of Ultron, I think, throws a real wrench in this idea that we can have absolute control. Because Stark's intentions, when you really boil it down, they're good. He wants to protect the world. But it backfires so spectacularly,
Yeah.
forces him to confront these unintended consequences, like even when he's operating from a place of free will.
So it's not just about having the freedom to choose, but it's like understanding that those choices have ripple effects that we can't always predict.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really raises questions about, like, where are the boundaries of free will?
Hmm.
Does it even matter if we can make choices if the consequences are totally outside of our grasp? And it's a question that I think even without, high-tech suits, resonates in our own lives all the time.
Totally. So where does that leave us? Are we all just playing some kind of cosmic game of billiards? Like our paths are predetermined.
Right.
And that's where I think Captain America enters the picture, throws a whole other wrench into this whole thing. Because here's a guy who like embodies this idea that free will is the point.
Absolutely, yeah. Captain America, his entire being revolves around this unwavering moral compass.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not about his strength, it's not about his shield, it's about the choices that he makes.
He even says it best himself, right?
Oh yeah.
The price of freedom is high,
Yes. Chills.
but it's a price I'm willing to pay.
Yes.
So good. That line, I mean, it just encapsulates perfectly his commitment to free will, to choosing what's right, even when it's so difficult. He really reminds us that if we're all just kind of, acting out these predetermined roles, then these concepts like good and evil, heroism, sacrifice, they become meaningless.
Totally. It's like his whole defiance of the Sokovia Accords.
Mm.
I mean, for those who haven't seen Captain America Civil War, this is basically like the world governments coming together to try to kind of control and regulate superhero activity, and Cap just says nope.
Yeah, refuses to sign on. And that refusal, it comes down to his belief in the freedom to choose what's right, even when it means defying authority. He reminds us that our choices define our values, and ultimately that's what makes us who we are.
It's that classic right versus easy dilemma,
Yeah.
And Cap he's throwing down the gauntlet. He's telling us our choices have weight, they shape who we become.
Exactly. But while Captain America presents, I think, a really compelling argument for free will in this world of kind of, moral absolutes,
Yeah.
things get even more complex, I think, when we go into the realm of Doctor Strange.
Oh, right. Because now we're talking magic, alternate dimensions, the ability to see millions of potential futures.
Right. It's a lot.
It really makes you wonder if this whole free will thing just goes out the window.
Yeah, it challenges our understanding of it. You remember in Infinity War when Doctor Strange uses the Time Stone to look into all those millions of possible futures.
Oh, man. That scene where he's like, I've seen all the possibilities, and there's only one where we win.
Intense, yeah.
Talk about pressure.
Exactly. Raises the question, if someone can see all of the potential outcomes, like, do our choices even matter at that point? Are we truly free if our destinies are already kind of set?
Right. It's enough to make you question everything.
Yeah, and that's what I think makes Doctor Strange such a compelling figure in this whole discussion, because he represents this idea that even within maybe a predetermined system, even when we're faced with what seems like infinite possibilities,
Yeah.
our choices still hold significance.
Okay, so it's less about us like writing the story, more about us choosing our own adventure, but within a set of maybe predetermined possibilities.
It's more like we're navigating this like crazy maze, right?
Okay.
And we might not be able to see the whole picture from the
Yeah.
get-go, but each step we take, each decision, it kind of determines the path, you know?
So even if we can't see like where we're ultimately going to end up, our choices along the way still matter.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's a really good way to put it. And it also kind of underscores the importance of acting with like intention, you know,
Oh,
with
interesting.
purpose. Even if we don't have this like, Doctor Strange view of all the different outcomes, we can still try to make choices that feel right, that
Yeah.
align with our values, maybe our aspirations.
Okay. So we've talked about tech kind of controlling our fate with Iron Man, moral compasses with Cap, and Strange messing with time. But what about when this idea of destiny is literally like woven into your DNA? And that's where I think the X-Men come in. They present this whole other layer to this free will debate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the X-Men, I think, give us this really interesting lens to examine that whole nature versus nurture debate, right?
Mm.
Are we products of our genes,
Mm.
you know, our inherent predispositions? Or do we actually have the power to kind of forge our own identities?
Right. And then you've got mutants like Professor X, right?
Right.
Born with these incredible abilities, but choosing to use them for good. To fight for peace and understanding between humans and
Right.
mutants.
And then you have Magneto,
Right.
who, I mean, talk about a figure who's been shaped by unimaginable trauma,
Oh,
and
yeah.
he sees conflict as inevitable,
Hmm.
you know, and his experiences, especially particularly, the horrors that he endured during the Holocaust, they really shaped his worldview,
Hmm.
and led him to believe that ultimately humans and mutants would always be at odds.
It's like his past experiences created this feeling of determinism for him almost.
Yeah, like history was just doomed to repeat itself.
Right.
Exactly,
Mm.
exactly. And Magneto's story, I think, raises this crucial question. Can we ever truly escape the weight of our past?
Right.
Or do those experiences kind of inevitably dictate our destinies?
Mhm.
It's a question that, I mean, all of us, even without superpowers, I think, grapple with on
Right.
some level.
All the time, yeah. We've all felt the weight of expectations,
Right.
family legacies, societal pressures, even our own internal narratives can feel kind of like a predetermined script sometimes.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Right.
But just as Professor X chooses hope and understanding, the X-Men stories, I think, they remind us that we're not solely defined by our pasts, our
Yeah.
genes, or even the labels that other people try to put on us.
It's a powerful message, especially in a world where, people are often judged and categorized based on, their backgrounds or perceived differences.
Yeah, and the X-Men really challenge us to consider this, I think.
Yeah.
Are we defined by those labels, those expectations?
Right.
Or do we have the agency to kind of forge our own paths?
This is getting good. So we're talking about some serious philosophical questions here using superheroes as our guide. So where does all this leave us in terms of, actually finding our purpose? Like, is it something we're born with, something that's thrust upon us, or do we get to choose?
Yeah, that's the age-old question of purpose, isn't it? And I
Yeah.
think what's so compelling about looking at this theme through these, Marvel characters is that there's no single answer.
Yeah.
Each hero's journey kind of gives us a different perspective on this very human search for meaning.
Okay, so break it down for us. Like Iron Man, for example. He starts out as this kind of brilliant, but somewhat self-centered inventor, more concerned with, building weapons than saving the world.
Yeah, yeah. Yet through his experiences,
Yeah.
through confronting his own flaws, the consequences of his actions, he goes through this pretty profound transformation.
Totally.
Yeah.
He realizes that true purpose often lies in something larger than himself.
Mhm.
And by the end, I mean, he's willing to sacrifice everything to protect the universe. That's a heck of a character arc.
It really is. And
Yeah.
and it speaks to this idea, I think, that purpose can evolve.
Oh,
That
interesting.
it's not always this straight line. It might emerge from these unexpected places, maybe by confronting challenges,
Right.
or by embracing our interconnectedness with other people.
So it's not necessarily about having it all figured out from the start, but being open to growth and allowing our experiences to kind of shape our understanding of what
Yeah.
really
Like,
matters.
that's a beautiful way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and while we might not have, Iron Man suits or face, world-ending threats every other week,
Right.
I think on some level we all feel this desire to make our lives meaningful, you know,
Totally.
to leave a positive mark.
It's that whole with great power comes great responsibility thing,
Right,
right?
right.
But even without superpowers, I mean, we all have a responsibility to use our talents and our influence to do good.
Absolutely, yeah. And that doesn't have to involve, grand heroic gestures or anything like that. Sometimes it's those small acts of kindness, compassion, integrity
Right.
that kind of ripple outwards, you
Totally.
know.
Okay, but what about those times when we feel, I don't know, lost, unsure of our purpose? Like we're just kind of drifting along.
Yeah, yeah. And that's where I think looking to these characters, even though they're fictional, can be so helpful.
Okay. Yeah.
Because remember Captain Ibaka?
Right.
This is a guy who, like, embodies dedication, this unwavering commitment to his ideals.
Right. He's all about, duty, sacrifice, fighting for what's right, even when it's hard. But isn't there like a certain freedom in that
Oh,
though?
for sure.
Like knowing what you stand for, even when the world feels like it's kind of chaotic?
That's a really great point because I think with Captain America, that unwavering sense of purpose that he has, while it's definitely demanding, it also gives him this like compass in a way.
Right.
It's not about blind obedience. It's about aligning your actions with
Well,
your values, and that can be really powerful.
yeah, it's like having that internal compass,
Yeah.
that North Star that kind of guides you. Even when you're facing, I don't know, tough choices, it makes you wonder if these heroes were real, what advice would they give us about finding our purpose?
Oh, I love that.
Right.
Let's see. If we could sit down with Tony Stark, for example, I feel like he'd probably tell us to, embrace our inner innovator,
Mm.
use our kind of unique skills and our passions to maybe solve problems, to push boundaries, just make a difference however we can.
Right, right.
And then Captain America, ever steadfast leader, right?
Right, right.
He would probably tell us that, true purpose often lies in serving something greater than ourselves.
Hmm.
He'd probably tell us to stand up for what we believe in, to fight for justice and equality, even when it's difficult.
Totally.
Yeah. And Doctor Strange, with his cosmic perspective, he might tell us to kind of stay open to the unexpected.
Oh, interesting.
He'd remind us that life is rarely a straight line.
Yeah.
That those detours and the unexpected turns, they can lead us to amazing discoveries or just like a deeper understanding of ourselves.
So good. And the X-Men.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The X-Men, I think, would probably tell us to embrace what makes us unique,
Yeah.
to recognize that our differences are actually our strengths
Yeah.
and that we have the power to define ourselves rather than letting other people define us.
I love it.
Right?
This has been quite the deep dive.
I have.
We've gone from Iron Man suits to the meaning of life, and I feel like we've only just scratched the surface.
Yeah. But that's the beauty of it, right? I mean, these questions about free will and purpose and what it
Mhm.
means to be human, these are ongoing explorations,
Totally.
and there's no easy answers. But I think it's the journey itself that can be so incredibly rewarding.
So true. Huge thank you to our listeners for coming on this philosophical adventure with us through the Marvel universe.
Yeah, this was fun.
And we'll leave you with this thought. If even fictional beings are wrestling with these big questions, it's a good reminder that none of us are alone in this whole search for meaning and purpose. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep embracing the power of choice in your own heroic journey. Until next time.